I call this meeting to order. At this time, let's have the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any current events at this time? Okay, seeing none. We have staff report at this time, please.
Do we need to do a roll call vote?
Sorry.
Roll call.
Okay. We will do a roll call at first.
Commissioner Bennick?
Here.
Commissioner Chapman? Commissioner Hallen?
Here.
Commissioner Ryan? Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Vice Chair Summers?
Here.
Chair Blair?
Here. Okay, moving on. At this time, we're going to do the staff report. Jeff?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I do have a couple of announcements tonight. First, I wanted to welcome to the Commission and for the people looking at home, newest member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, that's Dennis Smith. Pleased to have Dennis on the Commission. Dennis is retired after a very distinguished career working for some major retailers, Home Depot and Sears Roebuck, so we appreciate his experience in the retail industry coming to this Commission. We're just really excited to have him on the Commission. He lives in Sun City Grand, and he wanted to get interested and involved in the community. So here he is. So welcome, Dennis.
Thank you. Welcome.
A couple other things. On Sunday, October 17th, here at City Hall, actually outside in our campus, is going to be our second annual Green Fair. That's from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., and we're really excited about that. It'll be really an opportunity for us to provide educational opportunities for eco-friendly products, services, and environmental organizations throughout the region. So we invite people to come to that at any time between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., learn more about our green initiatives, sample some products, and hopefully learn more about what they can do to protect and enhance the environment as well. The last thing I have very quickly is we're requesting that the Planning and Zoning Commission actually meet on October 20th instead of October 6th. We have some scheduling issues. So again, if it pleases the Commission, we'd like to meet on October 20th instead of October 6th. And that's all I have to report.
Commissioners, does anyone have an objection with changing that meeting to October 20th?
No. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
That'll be fine. All right. At this time, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting of July 21st, please.
Also move.
Second.
At this time, we will take a vote. Commissioners, go ahead and vote. It has passed, then. That's
Madam Chair, the motion carries with a vote of 6 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you. Moving on to this time, we will go to PAD 09087.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Tonight we're presenting Altamira Planned Area Development. It's an amendment to the originally approved Pinnacle Peak Country Estates development. The subject site is located on the northwest corner of Reams Road and Pinnacle Peak Road. And to put this project in context, to show some of the surrounding projects, the recently approved Verdugo project, which is west of the site, was approved about 6 months ago or so. The Asante development is also west. Desert Oasis. There's also county property that abuts the site on the south side, as well as there's kind of a horseshoe cut on the northwest portion of the site. In addition, state lands is located east of the project. Primary access to the site will ultimately be from Grand Avenue along 163rd and onto Pinnacle Peak Road, which is classified as an arterial in the city of Surprise, as a minor arterial. Another main access point, which would be the primary access to that square mile, it's the half-mile mark, would be Asante Boulevard. It's a half-mile alignment that traverses through Asante, as well as it'll continue easterly as projects develop throughout the area. In addition, there's also another alternative access, which is San Ysidro Road. It's on a quarter-mile alignment, and based on when plats come in, site plans come in, it'll be determined at that time how that particular road is developed. Surrounding the site, to put some character and some images for everybody, there is Asante development. You can see here as a main entry feature. Also surrounding the site, there's some scattered residential lots, mainly in the county. You can see here they're large lot residential ranging from 1 to 5 acres with a mix of architectural styles, predominantly a southwestern. And you can see Pinnacle Peak Road is also in this exhibit. Right now it's a dirt road with native vegetation on either side. The amendment before you, the original Pinnacle Peak Country Estates development was in the 2003 timeline. It actually included more of a lower density, a 1.5 dwelling unit an acre overall development that at that time there was a market. They were moving forward with it. But they ran into some issues at the time with some drainage because of the area, and they slowed down a little bit. And since then the market has changed, and the proposal before you tonight is to change the standards in that development on the east side of the project. What the standards will do is it'll create 4 large parcels which consist of traditional residential development. Some of this development, if you're familiar with the Marley Park area, traditional development is something you'd see in that area. That would be about 108 acres. In addition, some of the standards would be adding a cluster development, which is also delineated in our general plan as promoting more cluster, more traditional type neighborhoods in order to maximize our infrastructure out there. Currently, the general plan allows for up to 3 dwelling units an acre in this area, and what they're doing is they're allowing a maximum 3 dwelling units an acre in this development as a whole, which does comply with the general plan. In addition, when the project first came in, we looked at the design, the alignments, the roadways, potential impacts that there could be on adjacent existing residential. There was a community outreach meeting held, and there was one person that showed up that just had general questions on the project with no opposition to it. Before you hear highlighted in the red are areas where there's existing larger lot residential, and what the applicant did and what staff recommended them to do is to change this area to allow for larger lot residential, which is the biggest lot they have in the document, an 80-foot wide lot around this perimeter, as well as a landscape buffer that separates this area from the existing 1-acre lot residential to 5-acre lot residential to mitigate any type of impacts of higher density in that area. In addition, we worked with them to provide a 160-foot landscaped area on the south side, and there also exists larger lot residential on the south side to mitigate any impacts in that particular area. Again, as discussed, traditional residential neighborhood. Here's a couple of images that will give you an idea. We're promoting more of side-loaded garage, non-garage dominant architecture, and we'll be looking at that when they move forward with their platting and their site planning as the project progresses. The cluster development, this is just one example of many. The way it could develop, it can develop into detached 6-pack clusters, into smaller houses. I mean, there's so many ways you can do it, but it really could add and promote the character of an area to maximize your land use while maximizing your open space area. And there's also, it really depends on how it moves forward at that time. The open space area consists of 15% open space, which is approximately 26 acres of the overall development. Within that open space area, we look at quarter-mile access to amenities, to parks throughout the development. You can see here there's 4 parks planned within a quarter mile of any area within this site. The larger park, this is an exhibit to show some of the amenities. It'll include basketball courts, volleyball courts, a number of different sports courts, ramadas, a softball field. So these requirements are in the development. So when they do move forward with site planning and platting, we'll be able to implement this, bring it before the commission at a later date with more of the technical details on it. This will show you that thought was given to the trail system in this area. Though on a screen it doesn't do it justice, but this is a very large area. So you'll see in some of these areas there's 70-foot, 40-foot landscape buffers with trails meandering through, which will provide an aesthetic and an amenity for the residents as the project develops as well as the area develops. Furthermore, we looked at characters and standards. You'll see this moving forward more and more as we move forward with development, but we're adding a lot of standards and character requirements in different zoning documents as well as in our new zoning code. But just to give you an example, the entry features are going to be looked at. As you can see here, this is what we're going to expect when they move forward with development. In addition, we're looking at fencing, staggering, columns, add to the character of the area, as well as be consistent with the general plan when you look at the language in that land use area. This is one of the last exhibits. We're looking more and more mailbox. When you drive into developments, you'll see mailboxes as the main focal point, and those usually don't have a lot of character or architecture to them. We're requiring, and the applicant worked with us to provide an architectural requirement for mailbox areas. And if you look on the lower right-hand corner of this slide, you can see that actually mailbox areas can be gathering points for the community. It can be a social area placed in parks and certain things. So we definitely will be looking at that when the project moves forward, is to add even the smallest detail as an amenity to the development. This is an overall plan. This does conclude my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the Commission may have. The applicant is also here.
Very good. Commissioner Howland, do you have any questions?
A couple. I talked to you a little bit this morning about the drainage issues on this site, and I wondered if we could discuss that a little bit.
Yes.
There is this firm area that apparently there's some question about whether it's correct or not, but will that be addressed again before we come to the... We have one more review of this, isn't that right?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, he is correct. Currently, the area is going through a major study with a third party, as well as all the owners within the area are part of this study, and they have a proportionate share of the financing of the study. Not to go into too much detail, because I'm not an engineer, but I know quite a bit about it. But the Happy Valley Road, which is about a quarter mile north of the site, Happy Valley Road it's almost what we call almost a man-made channel that was done about 50 years ago. But right now they're looking at how the drainage works in that area, because what's happening is on Happy Valley Road, some of the berming in there, if it fails, right now it shows that Altamira and other properties would be in a floodplain. What the study's doing is they know that that's an issue. Development can't move forward in this area until that's mitigated. So what the drainage plan is doing is it's showing how this, at worst case scenario, how the structural calcs and everything will work with Happy Valley Road. They're working on lifting that floodplain and designing where these areas and where the outfall would go from the channel, so this area could develop over time. And so what's happening is that the firm map that you're talking about, that map is a map that insurance companies use. So if you buy a property, they'll charge you X amount of dollars because you're in a floodplain. What they're trying to do is that firm map, the floodplain would be lifted, would be taken out of this area, so when residents buy properties, they wouldn't have to pay that insurance. And so what they're doing is they're looking at it on a very, very large scale. So there's many projects that are not going to move forward with platting, site planning until this is completed. And you are correct that a preliminary plat, the site plans, and the technical details of where the lots are, the parks, are going to come before the Plan Zoning Commission for your review as well as approval on some of those.
As policy, we would never approve residential in a firm area, would we?
No, you cannot have a residential house in a floodplain. It has to be lifted out of the floodplain.
I mean, even an insurable one, we wouldn't.
In some cases, on larger lot developments, that's where in some cases you'll see 1 acre lots that have a little bit of floodplain in them because they have natural, that's part of an amenity for the lot. But some of the smaller lot developments, you don't see it too much throughout the valley. But in some occasions you do, but it's more on the larger lot development.
The other thing, and it's hard when you look at this area out here, there's a lot of waterways that cross this property. And it's my understanding that none of these are a class of wash that we would treat as leaving natural. Is that right?
Right. There's a couple answers to that. The city of Surprise as a whole has a number of major washes that go through it that are classified as a 404 wash, where it has a lot of flow, a lot of intensity. This particular area, some of those areas that you see that's in there now, they're buffered from that channel, the Happy Valley Road channel, so they're not classified as a 404. If in the event that those washes need to be modified, which there's some language in here if they are modified based on the study, that they would have to go, they have strict design standards if they're to change, but in some scenarios, some of those areas could be preserved if it's shown in the area drainage master plan that they don't have to completely move. So we do try to maximize preservation of some of the washes, but some of the smaller ones, it's rare occasions where a lot of the smaller washes are preserved 100%. You do have to do some modifications to those.
The write-up does describe a drainage channel through the development. And I guess my only concern is it looks like it's going to be just a straight shot drainage channel if you look at the plans that are here. And I assume when we go to plot development that we'll get a more aesthetic type of drainage channel in this development?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, that is correct. The drainage channel that looks more is pretty much a straight through on the development. Again, this area is very large, so that space that you see in between there could be anywhere from 100 plus feet. So that drainage channel over time, we will bring it back, as you said, where you can review how it meanders through the development, what the landscaping is going to look like, the character, and also the native plants on the site now. We're looking, there's a requirement to preserve those and revegetate those, the ones that are salvageable. So you will be able to see that when it comes forward with plating and site planning.
One other question, and then I'll let it go. At one time, we talked about connecting Reams Road to 303, and at one time, I thought that was going to be part of one of these developments. Has that kind of died a unhappy death, or?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, yes, the Reams Road for this particular phase of development, it still has ongoing discussions with ADOT on all those interchanges along 303. In the event that an interchange is needed when it's warranted in that area, what ADOT will do is they'll look at the demographics, they'll work with the different agencies when it's warranted, which it isn't now, to actually continue Reams Road to 303. But right now, it's not shown as required at this time.
But that will be funded through transportation funding of some other...
Correct. They have different funding mechanisms for things. They have federal.
Right. Okay. At one time, I thought we had talked about some pooled effort on these developments. But
yeah, each development, they're also required to pay a proportionate share of their frontage or their area that they affect. So when it comes in for financing and when in the event it does move forward, if projects are moving forward concurrently, depending on the financing, some of them may have to pay proportionate shares of that, as well as with ADOT and maybe even through CIP projects.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Smith, do you have any questions? Commissioner Brown.
Oh, I have no questions.
Okay. I have one that I just need to have explained to me, and that is actually in the recommendations for D.
Yes.
It sounds, when do we know which way he's going to go with this? He has the option of not paying for the road. He has an option of doing...
Right.
When is that settled, and will you explain that, how
Yes.
the recommendation, please?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I'll try to explain it as simply as possible because it's a very long, I think it's the longest stipulation I've seen so far. Maybe it can win an award, but as the development progresses, when the first plat comes in, okay, of a residential lot subdivision, the first site plan comes in, what will happen is a traffic impact analysis will be done, and if it's shown that access on San Ysidro Road is required at that time, they have to build their half street right away from the beginning. If they start in a separate phase, maybe further south, and it's not shown that San Ysidro Road is needed, what the stipulation reads is alternative 2 is that if it's not needed at the first phase or at the time or at all, the developer will be required to design the road regardless, design their half street at 50% of build out, which means before the 50 percentile of permits that come in, so say if there's a 200 residential homes that's in there, before the 100th home is permitted, they have to submit a design for San Ysidro regardless if there's access on it or not from this development. At 75%, which is 150 homes, that needs to be approved, built, financed, everything has to be done with that, and or an in-lieu payment provided to the city. So there's 3 options. It really depends on when the development comes in, what's required, what the traffic impact analysis does. What we did with this stipulation is we put it in there to make sure that regardless, either the road's going to be built, the city's going to get the money to build it, So those are the two main things. So regardless, the road's going to be built either way, because this road will continue through one day because there is existing access off it now to the north. So regardless, the city will have the money to build it if it's not warranted for this development.
And that was approved by the developer, is that correct?
Correct. The developer did agree to the condition, as well as the city. When this condition was actually the same condition on Verdugo. It was worked out, it was discussed, and this is the same one just copied over to this development because they're both affected by the same San Ysidro Road.
Okay, so just, all right. Commissioner Summers, do you have any questions?
I had a couple of questions, and one of them is, if San Ysidro Road is not improved as part of this project, will this project have access out on Reams Road and Channel Trail, whatever I guess that's the name of the road on the left-hand side?
Commissioners, yes. As the project moves forward, they will have access on Reams Road. They'll have to build at a minimum, they're the first ones in, a minimum of a 2-lane, 55-foot half-street or right-of-way. So to answer your question, yes, they will have to build it. The language that's in the PAD, it really allows for the city to determine when the specific design comes in. We'll be able to look at the traffic impact analysis and be able to look at how this all will come together over time. And it potentially could be phased. So phase 1 could consist of Pinnacle Peak, the Sante Boulevard. Phase 2 would include Reams Road, San Ysidro Road. So it really depends on their traffic impact analysis and their design when they come in on what's needed at that time.
My concern is that upper quadrant, if you will, would only have access to Reams Road and Asante Boulevard, and it'd be hard to get through there. It'd be a dead end like Sun City, and I think that would be a disaster from fire service and others if they didn't have exits going onto those two streets.
Absolutely, commissioners. If that was the case, what the city is going to do is if they do access Reams Road, they can make a left on San Ysidro because it is an existing road. It's a dirt road. So what's probably going to happen is I'm almost guaranteeing this is that when the project does come in and there is access on Reams Road, San Ysidro will have to be built because they are going to access some of the residents to go on to 163rd. They will have that opportunity.
Okay. Another question. Pinnacle Peak Road, Happy Valley Road, and Asante Boulevard, are they all the same width right-of-way and capacity, or is San Ysidro, or pardon me, is Asante a bigger road?
Happy Valley Road, Pinnacle Peak Road, they're both 4-lane roads, but they're at a minor arterial classification at 110 feet total. The Asante Boulevard is an 80-foot cross-section, so it's classified as a collector road.
So it's a smaller road. Okay.
Right. It's a main collector through Asante. It will hold quite a bit of traffic, but it is downgraded from an arterial.
Okay. Well, my concern is the sort of the sharp bend going through the Altamira project, and it's very swooping, gentle curve, and you get there and you got this big whoop-de-doo through there, and it will continue on out across Reams going the other way, and it sort of looks like why are we doing this with such a sharp bend?
Commissioners, to address that question, we actually had the exact same concern you did. When the project first came in, Asante Boulevard actually went almost all the way down to Pinnacle Peak Road. And so what we did is we recommended that they straighten it up as much as possible to allow for the slightest bend compared to the one before, so they modified it. The reason why mainly the road bends a little bit, there's two reasons why. The first one is that when you have a road that meanders a little bit or bends through, it's a traffic calming. You don't have a straight shot through. You don't have to put speed humps in. So it slows traffic down. What the traffic division wanted to make sure is that when you enter the site, you enter at the half mile. When you exit the site, you exit at half mile. So as long as that alignment is proposed. In addition, if Asante Boulevard, we looked at it, if it went straight through, you would have a main collector road right next to existing 5-acre lot residential, and there could have been concern on that side as well. So what they did is they did revise it, modified it where it still bent a little bit, but still kept on the half mile. But that was a concern when we originally looked at it.
Okay, and the continuation of Asante Boulevard going straight, not through the project as it dips, but going straight, and the road along the edge intersecting where that bend is that going to be an issue?
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Let me see if I could highlight it here. Are you talking about this area here?
No, the next one over to the right.
Okay, let me delete that. This one here?
No, in the middle, right above the M.
Oh, in the middle, I see. Sorry about that.
Right above the M.
Right above the M. Okay,
Yes,
here
right
we go.
there.
Is that going to be a three-pointed intersection, or is that going to cause any issues?
That is correct. Usually, when you do deal with bends, it's a design issue when you plat out. We haven't with cluster housing that's next to it with the single-family residentials on the other side. But what will happen is when that does come in, the traffic division will have to look at turning movements and visibility triangles because you can't taper it too much when you connect in. You have to have more of a perpendicular type of intersection in there. So what will happen is there's a number of different possibilities for that intersection that we can look at. It's probably going to be angled in a way. So you have more of a 90-degree section instead of a taper.
Okay.
But right now we don't have any platting to really go into that level of detail.
Okay. One last question. The cluster housing, I'm wondering whether we have in our code something that requires guest parking. As I look at it, the private street and the face of the building very close to the private street, there's no place to park a car in front of your home or in front of your garage, say. And
Right.
so is there going to be guest parking as part of this plan, or is that part of our code that would require something like that?
Madam Chairman, members of the Commission, yes, we have an adopted SUDC, and what that does is that it breaks down from our previous code. Cluster housing, higher density residential, does require a certain amount of parking for a cluster development like that. There's many, when they come in for their design, there's so many different ways you can do it. You can do offset parking. You can even put it in a larger cul-de-sac area. There's a lot of ways you can do it, but we will look at that. And we would actually be open to a suggestion on that if so when they do come in for the design, we can give them a heads up to let them know that we are going to look at that.
Okay.
But there are requirements in our current code.
Okay, that's all I have.
Commissioner Ring.
Yeah. I noticed that in addition to the cluster housing, the single-family units went from a total of 284 units to 391 units.
Correct.
Any special reason? I thought we were trying to get higher density.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission, yes. He's referring to the original development came in with a lesser of density. They came in with, as you suggest, 260 some odd units of 18,000 square foot lots. What they did is that was at a 1.5 dwelling unit per acre, very, very low density in the area. What they did, because there was no market, there was nothing for that. So when the applicant originally came in, staff wanted to make sure they didn't go over 3, which is allowed in the general plan. And so what they're doing is they're coming in and they're maximizing their density, their infrastructure, which is supported by our treatment facility. But the key mark on that is even though they're going up to a higher density in there, the character and the site design of the plat will have to comply with the general plan character pattern that's in there. So to answer your question, it is increasing in density.
Is the lot size being cut down?
Correct. Yes, the lots are changing from a 18,000 square foot lot, ranging from a 5,800 square foot lot up to an 80 or 9,000 square foot lot range. So they have about 4 or 5 different lots. On a planning standpoint, when you have more diversity in lots, it creates more character and diversity in the neighborhood as well. So we looked at that, the general plan, the density, and we thought we could support that increase in density.
Okay. It may be too early to ask this, but what is the plan for the amenities going in? Is it going to go in up front, or is it going to go in as each of the 4, I don't want to call them phases, but the 4 clustered developments go in?
Very, very good question. What we do on any project is when they come in and they phase a development, we will require amenities regardless of the phase. So what will happen is when the first phase comes in, there are 2 nearest amenities, or 1 or 2, however the parks or the phasing works out, we will require amenities up front. To require every single amenity, unless they want to come in and build the entire development at once, they have an opportunity to phase that. But it also come back before the commission so everyone can see what amenities are being included with the first phase to make sure the residents are accounted for.
Okay. My next question is Pinnacle Peak Road. Are we requiring the developer to pay from Reams to the edge of Altamira, and then from the edge of Altamira going west to 163rd Avenue? Is that going to be a dirt road?
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, we were actually just talking about this earlier. You have the Verdugo development in Altamira. They were originally one project. So everything was going to be built adjacent to, through, et cetera, et cetera. Now that Verdugo and Altamira are two separate developments, they're actually currently in development agreements with them. The first one is Asante Boulevard, and also if the opportunity for Pinnacle Peak Road, they would have to enter into a development agreement with that adjacent owner, which they're in current communication with. So depending on who finances that, it will be required regardless from 163rd Avenue all the way to Altamira if they're the first ones in. They will have to build the entire thing regardless. But what's happening is we don't get too much involved with third-party development agreements between the two developments. So from what I heard, they're working with them to get paid back for it when Verdugo comes in. And there's also an opportunity when Altamira does come in for development for a new development agreement if the city has to get involved at all. But right now they are communicating with each other, and it kind of works back and forth that way.
But is it possible that Altamira goes in first and then we have a stretch of road that's unpaved?
No. Members of the commission, we will require that entire road to be paved, to Half Street at a minimum, all the way to their development regardless.
Madam Chair, to put it succinctly, whichever development comes first, whether it's Altamira or the other development, whoever comes in first will build Pinnacle Peak, and it will be a paved roadway.
Okay. Do we have a projection on timelines for, if this is approved, when they will begin construction?
Members of the commission, my understanding from the applicant is that they're not going to move forward until that area drainage plan and the drainage report is completed. From what I saw, they're about a year out on officially completing that report. But I would have to defer to them if there's any new proposals for this development. And shaking their head, there is none. No timing.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. For your record, Scott McCoy, Earl Curling LaGarde, I represent the property owner 371 on 163. To speak specifically to your question, Commissioner Rain, we are waiting for the results of the drainage study that impacts not only our project but several larger developments south of Happy Valley Road. I can tell you that to follow up on Adam's point regarding the development agreement, we actually have an executed and recorded joint development agreement between the Verdugo property owners and 371 on 163 that addresses the very issues you identified regarding Pinnacle Peak Road, who puts it in, and how that process works. And so we are all the way down the road and have resolved all of those kind of development issues as it relates to the two separate parcels. With respect to a timing, our key question, or the key question that remains, is the drainage issue. There's also a water issue that we have to resolve, and we're working with Verdugo and some other property owners in the area to come up with a water solution. And so we're at the very least a year out, and depending on the market, could be even longer.
Okay. That's all I have.
Commissioners, before I open this up to the public, anyone wishing any other questions? Okay. This does require a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this, please step forward. Seeing none, I close it and ask for a recommendation, please.
I move, before I continue on with this, are we recommending approval or are we approving this? We don't have a written recommendation.
You're recommending approval.
Recommend approval?
Recommending approval.
Okay. Recommend approval of PADA 09-087 Altamira, a major PDA amendment to Pinnacle Peak Country Estates. subject to staff's findings and stipulations A through D.
Second.
Commissioners, please place your votes this time.
Debbie, can you tell who didn't get it, or do you have them?
Should be there. No.
You need everybody to do it again? Okay, you got it.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the motion carries with a vote of 6 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to the discussion on the progress of the village.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, and welcome to Mr. Smith. We look forward to working with you. This presentation is to update you on the Village 1 planning process. As you're probably aware, the village strategy was proposed by the 2030 General Plan as a strategy to manage growth. The general plan itself was approved back in July 2008, and it will be up for referendum the fall of 2009 in November. The council also approved the commencement of village plans in January of 2009. And we chose 2 pilot villages to begin with the planning process. The first one is Village 3, right here to the southwest corner. And we chose that due to its strategic importance as a future tourist destination for the city of Surprise. Village 1 was chosen because of its civic, cultural, and economic importance as it stands for the city of Surprise. As we go on, these are the approved boundaries for Village 1. The Greenway Road forms the south boundary of Village 1. Reams Road is along the west. You have 115th Avenue forming a general boundary to the east. Grand Avenue, again, generally forming the north boundary, and it's a bit straggly over the side. Now, Village 1 is really, really important for the city of Surprise, mostly due to its position as a civic cultural center. It's a very exciting place to plan for, with Agua Fria right here, providing a warm welcome to the historic core of the city of Surprise, the original town site, also the large commercial activity area at Bell and Grand, following on to the cultural center and the sports activity, the stadium, and several schools and so on between Bullard and Litchfield, and several neighborhoods with little retail centers and so on. So as you can see, we are very excited to present you this, a very, very exciting place to plan for. Now, let's just take a step back and let me explain to you what a village plan is. It's really a long-range plan spanning about 20 years in time. So everything that I will present to you today, or the ideas that have been brought forward, think about it as not to be implemented tomorrow or in the next 2 years, but more like in the next 20 years, with the shortest time frame being about 5 years. This is a very collaborative effort between the residents, the stakeholders, property owners, the city, and regional agencies. And it is a vision for the community, so whatever we implement, we'll make sure it is for the best of the community. Going forward, when we have been meeting with 2 committees. One is an internal committee comprising of city employees who either live in the city of Surprise or has an expertise in that certain element. And also with an external committee who comprises of property owners, stakeholders, regional agencies, and also residents. So what I made them do was to first come up with a vision. The first thing they brought up was an entrepreneurship. They would like Village 1 to be an employment hotspot, a place for where entrepreneurs can locate, where there is technical expertise provided, probably zoning regulations in the way of enterprise zone, things like that. The second one they brought up was education. They would like Village 1 to be a place for education, all the way from K through 12 to four-year universities, technical colleges, and so on. Last but not the least, they would like for Village 1 to be a place for entertainment. This is something that a lot of people had brought up throughout the visioning sessions. We are highly lacking in entertainment, not just in Village 1, but the other villages. So they thought it's really important that we focus on entertainment as one of the aspects of the vision. Now, based on these, we came up with some design districts. So if you look carefully, the yellow portions, the large yellow portions, mostly comprise of neighborhoods that have been in existence in the last 10 to 15 years, like Coyote Lakes, West Point Town Center, Sun Village, Orchards, and so on. Several neighborhoods, very healthy, very well taken care of, with small retail centers near the arterial corners and so on. We don't really see any changes happening in these neighborhoods within the next 20 or 15 years. So we have kept them as conventional, which is the pattern they developed in, with homes or cookie-cutter homes, beautiful homes, well-maintained, with nice streets, arterial streets, collector streets, and so on. So we have kept them as conventional. If you move on, this is the OTS, the original town site, which has been developed in a traditional pattern with a grid-like street system, also porch front homes with a definite neighborhood character. So we think this should remain in the traditional neighborhood pattern with probably a historic overlay in the future, considering the housing stock is almost 50 or more than 50 years old. This pattern will continue on to the north and in the area along Agua Fria, which is owned by state lands, and they would like to see that conventional or the traditional pattern maintained. And also the Surprise Center between Bullard Avenue, Litchfield, Bell Road, and Greenway, and also the Stadium Village. We think this would be a special design generally because of the character of the area and also for the plans that have been proposed in that area. So we think it really calls for a special design, a lot of special interest planning in that area. If you look along Grand Avenue, you'll see the strip, the dark brown strip, which is a marketplace pattern, which we think will keep as is because with a lot of commercial, possibly some high-density residential and so on because of the commuter rail development. The small gray rectangle right here is Paradise Acres, which has a lot of large lot acre development, which we think should also be maintained to provide for high executive housing in the future. Now, if we move on to the center of the Village 1 plan, you have the train station at Bell and Grand, and this is based on the commuter rail planning activities by MAG and so on. So we think that area will have some transit-oriented development in the future. And I'll move on and we'll go to each of these districts. So at Bell and Grand, as I explained, the train station, so possibly a transit center in the future. This will be where the entrepreneurship of our vision comes to play. So this will be an employment hotspot, very employment-friendly place for entrepreneurs to locate to. So possibly an enterprise zone or so on, something like that in that area. It will also have live-work units, so it'll be easier for people to go to work and also encourage people to work or have business in that location. And of course, definitely it'll have some mixed use in the form of residential and commercial. If I'm going a little too fast, please let me know so I can slow down. This is, again, Surprise Center, focusing on Surprise Center. This is where the education and the entertainment portion of the vision comes into play. So this will be a 24-hour downtown atmosphere with civic and cultural facilities, a very strong urban character. So with urban roads and probably a convention center in the future. And as I mentioned before, educational component. So schools, K through 12, technical schools, a four-year university, everything will be located. So which means also housing for students, student housing, so a variety of housing units, probably studios, apartments, high-density residential units, things like that. So it'll be a very, very active, vibrant place to be in the future. Moving on to OTS, now we are taking a step away from the urban and the vibrant character. This is a very quaint neighborhood, not really urban, not really suburban, and with a very strong Hispanic culture. You'll see a lot of older housing stock in OTS. And we think we should embrace that character, let it remain, the porch front homes. We think we should also encourage live-work units, let people have businesses that will help them maintain their livelihood and so on. And this was also strongly recommended by both committees. This is the area along Agua Fria River, the large portion, the rectangular portion that is under the ownership of state lands. And both the work group committees decided they should probably be alongside Tempe Riverwalk or the Scottsdale Riverfront, maybe San Antonio, because of Agua Fria River. So a trail system all the way along Agua Fria with specialty shops, residential, probably medium to high density residential with recreational trails, everything that works in tandem with each other. There is also a plan from Maricopa County Flood Districts working on Agua Fria Master Plan with a trail system all the way from the north to Salt River. So we think a development such as this will work very well with that trail master plan. Now I'm just changing gears because this is also something that we discussed throughout the committee, streets, and we are talking about complete streets. When appropriate and not entirely given over to vehicles, streets can become places of activity. And this is exactly what complete streets are aiming for. They need to be unique, made for everyone, not just for cars or trucks, but for pedestrians, bicyclists, which will provide safe access and a place that is vibrant, a street that is alive, places of entertainment, probably with nice-looking things like the street lights, nice, pretty signs, also markings for bicyclists and pedestrians and so on. And this was something that our committee members would like to see in Village 1. And they identified Bullard Avenue as one of the possible complete streets. Also, Greenway Road is also a potential candidate. The West Point Parkway, running along the West Point Town Center, is also a potential candidate for complete streets. So this is something that they have reiterated over and over in all of the meetings. So I just wanted to bring that up to you. Some of the key elements, in addition, that we discussed is less prominent parking. So if you look on to the right side of the monitor, you will see mid-block parking, which is pretty much hidden parking from the street. So it's not up front. Like, for example, when you enter Surprise right now at Bell and Grand, the first thing that you'll notice is the large amount of parking. So the committee members thought that maybe we should be displaying our retail centers and not really the parking. So we think they think it should be either hidden or underground, and they really like this idea. This is from Sacramento with the mid-block parking. They also said we should probably look at providing a variety of housing units, since we don't since we don't have too many studio units for senior citizens or singles. They also brought up the internal circulator system, which I will discuss in detail in the following slide. And because Village 1 is the only place where Grand Avenue and Bell Road intersect, they thought maybe as an identifiable feature we should have grand bell towers at key intersections and Surprise in various shapes and sizes, which will take on the character of the area that it's in. So, for example, if it was located close to West Valley Art Museum, so it might take some artsy character and so on. They also would like to see an arts district, and some of the areas proposed were OTS, the original town site, or closer to West Valley Art Museum near Bell Road and so on. And they think we should also encourage arts festivals, such as the Shakespeare Festival in Oregon, I think, and also Jazz Festival in California somewhere. I don't remember, but something like that. So these are the key elements in Village 1. I just made a special slide for transportation, and really we only focused mostly on transit because most of our work group members thought we direly needed transit, not only in Village 1 but the entire Surprise, but Village 1 in particular because of the higher population demographics here. And they thought about an internal circulator system that will primarily serve only Village 1 and then go on to connect to other villages. The circulator system should take on the character of the Village 1 or complement the character of Village 1. So they suggested something like a smaller trolley system or a smaller bus. And for funding, they were thinking probably having a public-private partnerships between the city and some of the private entities. And they also outlined some potential circulator routes, such as this. Please excuse my large stars. It had some trouble showing up in the computer, and that's why I had to do this. The large stars are the major destinations, which our work group members and also some of the experts in transportation thought were major destinations. So the first route is the red Bell Road circulator, which will just travel east to west, only apply on Bell Road, all the way from Coyote Lakes and beyond, all the way up to out west on Bell. The blue will serve these major destinations: the hospital at Meeker Boulevard, the small commercial center at Reams and Bell, also go through the City Hall complex, the stadium, the schools, and so on, through Litchfield Road to the commercial center at Bell and Grand, and then back on Grand Avenue. The purple, again, serves most of these neighborhoods: West Point Town Center, Sun Village, Orchards, and so on. Again, passes through the City Hall complex, back to OTS, circulates through it, and back onto its original route, onto Bell. That's one of the potential circulator roads. These are some of the routes that we discussed. The second alternative is, again, shows all the major destinations. Now, we have added some more. The one on state lands is a future destination. Now, this group really thought schools and commercial destinations would majorly serve the public. So they kind of drew this purple route, or the pink route, which really serves most of the schools and the neighborhoods, including the Thompson High School, Elementary School in Almiraj, and then back up in OTS. So if you notice carefully, it really goes along where the schools are at. The lighter pink, or the fuchsia, serves most of Sun Village, the neighborhoods along Bell Road, and then back on Grand, the commercial centers and some of the high-density residential up over here. We also held an open house on August 5th of 2009, and these are some of the comments that we received from the open house. Most of the visitors thought the vision was very diversified and comprehensive. They also liked the idea of an arts district. They thought it was very interesting. They wanted us to make sure Surprise Center is carefully planned and not piecemeal in the future. And they thought the transit alternative was very direly needed. This is my last slide. Just want to let you know the committee meetings will continue on to the future, and we will be providing updates to the Commission and the City Council at key milestones. The draft plan will be ready in the spring of 2010. And this concludes my presentation, subject to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. That was very good. Commissioners, any questions?
I have a procedural question, because there's a square mile in this property or this area that really isn't developed, and you've laid out a lot of things that they wanted in there, like a university and schools and shopping and entertainment, and it's a lot of things for 1 square mile. And the thing that concerns me is most projects come in project by project, and are we going to be able to have a plan for that square mile, that if it doesn't fit the overall objective, we tell the property owner that they can't have that business? Or you follow where I'm going, Jeff?
You want to try, or you want me to do it? It's up to you.
I can start.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Hallen, for the question. Through the chair, the square mile will have an master site plan, and that's the whole idea of a village district or a design district. And we will be going through it and carefully planning, and not piecemealing, or not planning it through a piecemeal fashion. And that's the exact intent of the village plan. So what we are doing right now is concentrating on that square mile and identifying how the circulation should be, which it already has a master plan, so which we'll be carefully identifying how the circulation should be, where the uses should be located, and how we can optimize the entire square mile to make sure all these uses fit in. And we have done some modeling, and we tried to fit in the City of Phoenix downtown within that entire square mile, and it did fit in. Only it would have to be developed at a higher density than we are used to in the City of Surprise. So it might go on to taller buildings, higher rises, things like that. But there is definitely a way, and we understand that it should be carefully planned, and it probably should have uses and appropriate locations for the uses to go to right at the very beginning. So.
Yeah, Commissioner Hale and Vanitha nailed it. The only thing I would add is if someone comes forward with a specific development proposal that's contrary to the village plan, then the Planning and Zoning Commission should turn it down, frankly. An example would be, now subtleties, you could certainly work with the developer, add conditions, stipulations, and just say it met the intent. But, for example, if someone came in and said, we want to do a warehouse district, we want to do industrial, we want to do very, very low-density residential, well, then certainly staff would recommend denial. Hopefully it wouldn't even get to you, to be candid with you. But if it got to you and you think it's not consistent with the village plan, then you'd be a very solid ground to turn it down.
One of my question comes, like we've already done little pieces in that section there where the new apartments are, where we put a bank in one corner and a restaurant here, but there's never any total plan, like does this all fit together? It's that property owner comes in and it's his thing meets our overall goals, I guess, is, it's he designs it the way we want it and that, but it really doesn't fit the character. This village plan will allow us to say we don't need a bank in this area, or
that's correct.
Or a drive-in or whatever it happens to be.
The only thing that's tricky on this, though, is the zoning is already in place.
Yeah,
so it's a little tricky, and Jim would start tapping me if I went too far afield on it. But in many cases, we're able to sit with the developer and talk to them and show them the plan and show them why they might be selling themselves short in the future. Frankly, Surprise has made some interesting decisions in the past, about allowing the development to start at the front and then working their way back, which affects view shed and property values and so on. You're always better off starting in the middle and you're working your way towards the front. So we can help control that short of someone have the zoning in place. They already made an investment-backed decision on a piece of property and they have all their ducks in a row to move forward. But generally speaking, if it's a brand new proposal, it's inconsistent with the village plan, then in most cases you should be able to turn it down.
I mean, I like the concept, but I just wondered if it really was going to work, or whether we're building up expectations in this community, and then we'll prove something else that.
Yeah. Well, let me just add on that, since you opened it up, if the chair doesn't mind. I think that's really the shows the resolve of the City Council, Planning and Zoning Commission, and frankly staff. Do we have the courage to say we have a vision for our community? We have a more specific vision for the area in and around City Hall. We want it to become realities. We have to stand together. We have to stand firm and insist on very high quality. You can go either way, but there are typically some pressures, whether they're political or just from the real estate community or so on, to move forward, particularly during times of recession, where people will argue, we should approve anything because we need new business. But that's the challenge for the commission. You have to tell yourself, is the proposal so far afield from the plan that we need to reject it on its face, or with some tweaking, is it good enough, or yeah, this is perfect, we need this. Okay.
Thank you.
And I have a question also dealing with projects that have already been approved in this area, specifically in the Stadium Village area. And is there going to be some kind of conflict with the vision for that area as being an entertainment, urban feel hub? And it comes to mind a retirement center has been planned there, an empty office area is there. Is that going to conflict with anything that we want to do in the future, whether it's architecturally, connectivity, the general feel of the area?
Through the chair, well, we don't really see a conflict as far as the Stadium Village itself is concerned, because the plans that have been approved are very much in line with the vision for village in that area. It's got mixed use, it's got residential, commercial, a lot of activity that's going on. So once it's built out, it will definitely take on the character that is needed for that area. It'll bring in a lot of vibrancy, it'll bring in people, it'll bring in commercial activity, it'll bring in entertainment. And it's forming slowly. If you have visited, it almost seems like a small, tiny little city center, and that's exactly what we want happening in that area.
And my only concern is that it is going to come off that it was piecemealed together, because that was one of the concerns when we were voting on some of those issues, is that we were going away from what that vision for that project was in that area and started putting in projects because we felt we needed to fill the space almost. So I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't come off that way.
I think one thing we'll do, too, as a staff, is to make sure that we start maybe a little broader when we present these individual development cases for you. Instead of focusing on just the micro, meaning the parking lot, the elevation, the in, the out, we'll back up a little bit and say, is it consistent with the general plan? Is it, more importantly, consistent with the village plan? How does this character fit in with everything around it? And then zoom in on the smaller portions of it. And you may, early on, say, this isn't a good fit, and we may want to pull back. But you're right. I think surprise in general, and I think we're moving in this direction with the SUDC and the bundling concept, is to start bigger always with master plans and then get smaller as we go along. And remember, people can come in now through our process and do a master plan for 100 acres, get that preliminarily approved, so we establish the character, the long-range utilities, but at the same exact time get final approval just for the smaller piece. But you're right, we have to keep it in context with whatever else is going around it. And that will help us stay away from some of the mistakes that we've made several years ago.
I have a couple of questions and a comment. On that theme, we have, in the recent past, like within the last year, we have approved projects simply because nothing else worked there, and here was something that was going to go in there, and technically it worked, but it wasn't in the best interest of a master plan for a village or even a smaller area. So I think your suggestion is very good if we can see where this particular issue that we're looking at fits in the broader picture. I think that would help a great deal. I have two questions. As we go forward, not only with this village plan, but any of them, where does the funding come from to make the changes or the enhancements?
Well, as far as the village plan itself is concerned, it's mostly staff-driven, with comments from the work group, committee members, and people like that. But the funding itself would pretty much be as it is right now. The developers would build only under our regulations or under our policy documents and so on. So the funding will just happen as it is right now.
And I can see in some of the less developed villages that are planned for the future, as developers come in, they would fund a good portion of that. But in a Village 1 concept where it's fairly well built out now, where would the funding, let's say, for Village 1 come from?
Take a stab at it. Madam Chair, frankly, the stimulus monies coming down from the federal government are actually helping us a fair amount in that regard. As you're probably aware of, maybe by reading the newspapers, just as an example, we received $2.1 million of neighborhood stabilization program funds. And what that's allowing us to do is to buy abandoned and foreclosed properties, to rehabilitate them or knock them down and build new affordable units. So that's one way of revitalization. Obviously, when we move forward with passenger rail, which to us can't happen soon, that'll be leveraged very heavily with federal money, with state money, and so on. But the other thing is what we have to do as a community is to be a little bit more creative, in my opinion, with our development agreements and getting the developers to actually pony up a little bit more of the dough on some of the stuff, whether it's streetscape improvements, lighting, signage, parks, plazas, things of that nature. Very short term, if I'm being candid with you, it's going to be a very slow go for the next 2 or 3 years. But that's the perfect opportunity for us to do things like the village planning. Get all of our plans in place, identify future funding sources, develop our long-range capital improvements program, and then build out very slowly. I talked to a developer yesterday, and this is going to sound a bit glib, but I believe it. When development comes back, when the markets come back, when financial opportunities are more plentiful, You can't beat 350 days of sunshine. People will develop here. They will. We just have to have all of our ducks in a row, and I think Benita's plans with the Village 1 and Village 3 are going to get us well positioned. And then you're right, it's just a matter of us being really smart with our money and leaning heavily on developers.
My last question has to do with the transit routes. What do you envision going on those transit routes? I mean, we have these, it looks like are they bus routes? Are they trolley routes? Are they bicycle paths? What do you envision for them?
Well, the transit routes are mostly intended for trolleys or any mode of transit that would complement the character of Village 1. And they consistently brought up a trolley or a smaller bus, not really a larger Valley Metro bus, but a smaller bus. But when we were considering this, they had also mentioned probably having public-private partnerships. So it may be a small private trolley that would function under the City of Surprise regulations, something like that. It's something that we considered, something that we discussed. But since you mentioned bike paths, they thought bike paths should be on all the streets, with the exception of Grand Avenue and probably, pretty much Grand Avenue, that's it. But everywhere else would have bike lanes and pedestrian paths or sidewalks. But these routes are only for transit or would use for transit buses, trolleys. And like I said, I'm repeating myself, but they thought we should probably have a trolley or a smaller bus.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
When we say trolley, we're talking a gas-powered trolley, right? Not a
Or
light
an
rail?
electric, yeah,
Okay.
gas or an electric, yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One of them is with the village plan and the density of development that gets proposed and approved. And I know we have standards that limit the total amount of development, but I'm wondering if we have any minimum standards. I'm fearful of underutilization of land with less density than you would want, and you end up with a pancake sort of a downtown, not as vibrant, not as full as you would hope. Is there going to be any minimums, I guess is my question.
And that's something we can absolutely look at. We do envision having highest possible density that we can possibly get in Surprise Center and also along Agua Fria. So that is an excellent point. We will ensure that a standard like that will definitely go in, especially in Village 1 where space is premium.
Okay. Second question, this is sort of micromanaging, but I'm wondering about the rural land use on Reams, just north of Greenway, and particularly the Reams frontage, which right now is a small house with a big lot, and behind that you have, 3 or 4 acre parcels where it's single family house and horses and whatnot. But the Reams frontage seems to me it ought to be more dense than a huge lot with a single house on it, or 2 houses or whatever.
Well, this parcel was heavily debated, but the consensus among both the work group members was to maintain the large lot, mostly because they think it will take on the character of what's that place? The Biltmore Estates in downtown Phoenix, with the large estate residential homes, so which will provide housing for executors in the future. So they think we should maintain the large lot residential just because of that. It will take on the character of the Central Avenue in downtown Phoenix.
So you're just calling it your idea of rural land is just large land?
Yeah, in this case, yes, absolutely.
That helps. One last thought, and it is maybe sort of harebrained, but I'm looking at the Agua Fria River going through Village 1, and I'm thinking of the Tempe Town Center and the Tempe Town Lake. And just as something to throw in the back of one's mind, might be an opportunity, might be an asset, might not. But just
I don't think that's harebrained at all. I think that's a great question, because I was thinking the same exact thing when you showed the pictures of the water and the canals.
Absolutely.
I think there's Benita, maybe you can speak to this. I cannot, but I know there are some concepts out there about actually reestablishing Agua Fria to actually have water in it. Maybe not to the extent of a lake, but at least flowing water 365. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes,
I can't.
absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, Jeff is absolutely right. We do have water, or an Agua Fria water master plan, which is being spearheaded by Maricopa County Flood Control District and also the Friends of Agua Fria, and their intention is to connect Agua Fria all the way from up north to Salt River. So there would be a trail system alongside and water in the floodway. So it is definitely a plan. On paper, it has been adopted by the City of Surprise as well. I want to say January, if not earlier. It was adopted by the City of Surprise, City of Peoria, El Mirage, also the City of Phoenix. And so the Friends of Agua Fria and Maricopa County Flood Control District, they have been approaching all the cities to make sure they adopt this plan. And it definitely does show Agua Fria as with water. And so that's definitely a possibility. I would say almost 95%.
Nice to have a lake as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. It's been a great presentation. And we would like to bring this up again, that you can keep us informed of what's happening and any changes and things at a later date.
And if there's any comments that commissioners have, I mean, when we hit you with these broad plans and you think of something week down the road or so, give Vanitha a call, send her an email if you have any ideas. And there are no harebrained ideas for sure. They're just things to talk about. So we're very early in this process, and we want to have a good, solid plan to present to you in the spring. So any ideas between now and then, just send Vanitha or myself an email. Appreciate it.
Very good.
Yeah, we on every staff report, if you look at it right now, you'll see their name and their email address and their phone number. And that was per the request.
It's on your actual.
Came up somewhere else.
No, the commission asked for this several months ago to always have that contact information, and we always put it on every staff report. We're on the front page.
Yes.
No worries.
All right. Thank you.
It doesn't have his phone number or email address on, it just has the names,
Just the names.
I believe. Hold on.
Right. We can still provide you with a list. Be happy to do that. Deb, if you want to take care of that for the next
I
meeting.
mean, because I might think of something in a week and I'll have thrown away your nice report or misfiled it. I mean,
There you go. Fair enough. Thank you.
All right, Commissioners. The only other comment I have is I'd like to make sure that we're getting the reports on if these are recommended for approval. We didn't get the sheet.
We apologize for that. That was an oversight. We'll make sure the conditions are at your, or the recommended motions are at your places.
Thank you. Anything else, Commissioners? If not, this meeting is adjourned.